Gardena, en gerdegum kernega, flimgefrunon. Huta edelinga ellen frimedon.
Oft skilt shaving skeðina 13 monogamajum.
Meodo settla ofta exora elas. Sivan eres ver feskjeft fonen.
Hei þess frofreheba, weoks under vopnum, weð minnum það, og það him. Æs vits þara tendra, og við hungrare hudranskjulde, gomman kallin. That was good kerning.
Okay. Let's stop there for a second. When you listen to these verses, what kinds of images come to mind? For me, I see Vikings, swords, I see blood spatter, maybe a lamb that's being roasted over an open flame. There are a couple of big guys, they're having a boulder toss, they're having a ball. And, the clanking of steins filled with mead to the brim. Now, of all the world's modern-day languages, which do you think has the most in common with the one that we just listened to? Italian, Spanish, French? If you thought German, you're onto something, because this is spoken in a Proto-Germanic tongue. Now, if I asked you which language you thought had the second most in common, would you guess English? Believe it or not, the previous verses that we just listened to from Beowulf were written in a language that served as the bedrock for English. That's why we call it Old English. That's gotta make you wonder though, right? I mean, how did we get from here
That was good kerning.
to here?
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain.
On today's episode,
I'm not dead yet.
we're gonna take a journey through history. Our destination? The English language.
What was that?
We're gonna look at the reasons why you might choose between words like paradise and lawn,
I'm getting better.
Getting better.
lavatory or shitter. This and other important dilemmas coming up. English is tricky. Many of its rules defy logic. Like when you put the letter O and the letter U next to each other, shouldn't that read ooh, not ow? There are other silent killers too, like the letter L in the word should. I mean, shouldn't that just read shalled? Instead, it's something completely different. Certain spellings look straightforward, and yet they behave unpredictably. And though this might infuriate some, the reason for all this confusion is, I think, really cool. To understand how these rules might be useful to you as a writer, a bit of history can go a long way. So here's a bit of history. Old English. Remember, the guys throwing the boulders, roasting the lamb. That was the language of the Germanic tribes who settled what is now England in the 5th century. But after the Norman conquest of the 11th century, things started to change. The Normans spoke a dialect of Old French. And with this conquest, they gave Old English a complete facelift. They added French words, they changed some of the rules, they streamlined the syntax, and ta-da! With the mixing of Old English and Old French, we get...
One that April with a shore soda.
Middle English.
This feels stupid.
No, it's not stupid. You can do it.
Really
I think it's
stupid.
awesome.
I think it's really stupid. Ken School would be so proud of me.
They are proud of you. I'm proud of you. This is my girlfriend, Christiana.
Hi.
She's about to read the most famous literary example of Middle English, the prologue from Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales.
Okay. One that April with his shore soda, the drought of March hath parted to the rota, and bothered every vine in switch liqueur, on which thereto engendered is the floor. When Zephyrus ake with his sweeter breath, and spirit hath in every holt and heath, the tender croppus and the younger sonna hath in the ram his have a coursey runna, and small falls mock and melody that sleep in all the nichts with open ee, so pricketh him nature and here courages, then longing folk to gon on pilgrimages, and palmers for to saken strange strands, to furna howls couth in sundry lounges, and specially from every shear's end of England to Canterbury they wende, the holy blissful martyr for to sake, that then hath holpen one when they were sake. One, no.
Oh, no? We're not
That
done?
him hath holpen one that they were sake.
Wow.
You're good.
That was badass.
Thanks, thanks again's cool.
My bar for badassery is about...
It's about
That's it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
At reciting the Canterbury.
You're
Tales?
amazing.
You get a life.
Until the 1400s, the English primarily spoke French. But come the 15th century, the clerks of the Chancery in London, who prepared all the king's documents, started introducing Latin words into the fold. This becomes popular because, well, if the king speaks Chancery Standard, the people will too. And it's at this point where modern English starts to emerge. During this period, Chancery Standard introduced somewhere between 10 and 12,000 Latinate words. Words like aberration, illusion, anachronism, democratic, dexterity, enthusiasm, imaginary. It's this interbreeding of Germanic and Latinate language that plays heavily to our advantage as writers. In modern English, it's really easy to distinguish a word's origin by the way we spell and pronounce them. Germanic words sound clunky and are usually pronounced the way that they are spelled.
We can feel the tug of the halter at the nape of her neck, the wind on her naked front.
That's from Seamus Heaney's poem, Punishment. Latinate words, generally reserved for medical and scientific terminology, don't necessarily follow phonetic sense.
Were not impersonal judgment in aesthetic matters a metaphysical impossibility, you might fairly achieve it.
That's from Marianne Moore's poem, To a Steamroller. So as writers, how might this help us? It's one of our chief responsibilities to manage tone, or the way an arrangement of words sound, and in turn makes us feel. The greatest artists, literary, musical, or visual, they all have a mastery of tone, how to shape it, how to make it turn on a dime. They can establish tone so piercing, so haunting, that even after we put the book down, or leave the gallery, or take the needle off the record, something resonates with us. Diction, or the words that we choose, makes a huge difference in this regard. And knowing the difference between Germanic and Latinate words,
Tug,
Aesthetic,
the nape,
a metaphysical,
her neck,
impersonal judgment.
the wind.
and when to use them can be hugely helpful as you think about your tone in your writing. A quick note. Not all of what I recommend here is empirical. Many of the trends and rules that I've mentioned and I'm about to mention rely upon context to work. Something that works well in one context may not work so well in another. So even though I've said that Latinate words sound sophisticated and that Germanic words sound clunky, that doesn't make it true 100% of the time, as you'll see. That being said, how can we use diction, our knowledge of Germanic and Latinate vocabulary, affect tone? Let's look at an example. James Joyce's novel Ulysses relies largely on word choice. For those of you booking it for the emergency exit right now, slow down for a second. Despite your impression of Ulysses, how difficult or out of control you might think it is, Joyce was a master of control. At this moment in the book, we meet Leopold Bloom, one of the book's two protagonists. He's just woken up, he's made himself breakfast, and he's about to prepare a meal for his wife, Molly. I'm just going to read the first sentence from chapter 4 of Ulysses. Mr. Leopold Bloom ate with relish the inner organs of beasts and fowls. He liked thick giblet soup, nutty gizzards, a stuffed roast heart, liver slices fried with crust crumbs, fried hencots rose. Giblet soup. I swear my stomach grumbles every time I read this passage. I know some of you are probably groaning, you probably think that this all sounds disgusting, but honestly, I would love to sit down at Leopold Bloom's table. Part of that reaction, I think, has to do with the tone that Joyce has established here. I can see much of what he describes right in front of me. I can smell it. I can imagine what it tastes like. Joyce owes much of this viscerality, this tactility, to the use of concrete language, or language we can interpret through our senses, and by predominantly employing words of Germanic origin. Words like Leopold, Bloom, ate, fowls, thick, soup, nutty, roast, heart, crumbs, grows. Of the 31 words in this sentence, 20 of them are Germanic. Even the name Leopold Bloom, a character who is very in touch with all things physical, bodily, and even sexual, is distinctly Germanic. This is no accident. It's worth noting here, too, that some of the words I expected to be Germanic because of their hard, straightforward pronunciation are actually Latinate words like beast, gizzard, giblet, and crust. They possess similar sonic qualities to those that are strictly Germanic. They're clunky, earthy, concrete, and they're Latinate. Big surprise to me. So again, we get this clunky feeling, this sort of earthly, delicious, visceral tone, I think, because of the number of Germanic words that Joyce has employed here. 2 out of 3. Now let's take a look at another sentence from Ulysses. At this point in the novel, the paternal and sometimes maternal Leopold Bloom, Germanic, and young Stephen Daedalus, Latinate, are walking back to Bloom's house on Eccles Street. Bloom and Daedalus have had a hell of a day, filled with good eating, the quitting of jobs, a funeral, infidelities, racial intolerance, prostitutes, and love. Bloom, feeling very fatherly, invites the young Stephen in and prepares some hot water. Bloom turns the faucet, and the narrator asks, "Did it flow?" "Yes. From a Roundwood Reservoir in County Wicklow of a cubic capacity of 2,400 million gallons, percolating through a subterranean aqueduct of filter mains and single and double pipage constructed at an initial plant cost of £5 per linear yard." Sounds scientific, right? Bit technical. Now, of the 40 words in this answer, 21 of them are Latinate. Compared to the previous example, this ratio may not illustrate their impact as clearly, but all of the objects and actions in this phrase are Latinate. Objects and actions are some of the meatier parts of an English sentence, and the phrase is populated by words like reservoir, cubic, capacity, gallons, percolating, subterranean, aqueduct, initial, linear. All of this technical jargon comes from Latin origin. Both of these examples show what happens when you have an imbalance of diction. As you can see, one particular tone asserts itself more prominently than another. But Ulysses would not be the great novel that it is if it borrowed either entirely from Latinate or entirely from Germanic diction. It's Joyce's precise deployment of either linguistic tradition that gives the novel the sonic texture and energy for which it's renowned. Use repetition, use pattern, alternate Germanic and Latinate words. Experiment. But as you read and write, think about how the sonic quality of the words in play contributes to the way that we experience the information. Again, it isn't all about what's being said. It's about how it's being said. I was driving in the car today and thinking about Germanic versus Latinate words and how you don't want to use, a vocabulary entirely of Germanic words. You don't want to use a vocabulary entirely of Latinate words. You don't want to have a balance necessarily, but you want to think about how you're going to employ each productively. And I was thinking about the Beatles. We were listening to the Beatles in the car. And I was thinking Germanic words are a lot like McCartney. McCartney's down to earth. The songs by Paul McCartney are the pop hits. They're the ones that you really can't get out of your head. And the ones that make you feel real deeply. Not that Lennon's aren't, but Lennon, his head is always up in the clouds somewhere. He's real cerebral. He's analytical. And it's the merging and the balance of those two voices that made the Beatles an incredible band who made incredible music. When the Beatles broke up, McCartney didn't have Lennon and Lennon didn't have McCartney. And without putting them side by side or without being able to work together, their music suffered. That's not to say they didn't write great songs afterward, but their songs on the whole were never as powerful as when they had each other as foils to one another. Same thing goes for Latinate and German diction. When it comes to English, they need each other to be powerful. For more discussions on language, craft, and writing, go to www.wordshop101.com. Special thanks to Christiana Sieverding for lending her talent and her support in the making of this episode.